controversial subjects with the facts can be tense, but we are a sub-science here to make things make sense.
Today we're talking about internalized homophobia. I know we've already
The
said
way you
that.
said even the intro, it's like so chipper. It's like
We're going to chat about...
We're going to be talking about how we hate ourselves.
No,
Ding.
I've been thinking about, obviously, you know, our podcast many times is super lighthearted, and I think that's something that's nice about it. Even when we take on some like more intense topics, it's nice to be able to laugh at it, especially when we are kind of on the inside of that. So I feel like...
You want to laugh at this?
No, but I guess I want to like start the conversation by being like, of course, we're always trying to be as accepting and open as possible, but I want to also be able to have fun. And because we're gay, I feel like at least this one we can like play with the idea of this. But of course, this is a serious conversation, a real problem in both the queer community
I can't
and the
stop laughing. I don't know why.
And so we're going to be talking about what is internalized homophobia. And I think this is relevant to everyone, whether you're straight, gay.
It really is relevant to straight men who have been calling in a lot, and we love you and we see you.
Totally.
There's a lot of straight guys being like, hey, I'm one of your straight listeners. I'm like, wow, it's like the only people who've called in.
I feel it's that and Australians. We're like,
Yeah, we're
the
like,
two people
it's
who are like
people
don't
like getting
expect-
like, you know, like domed and shamed. Like it's like Australians and straight men are like, yeah, they're like hate listening. Kidding. We love straight guys, but they're a huge part of internalized homophobia.
Well, I think everyone is affected by it, right? Like there's
Wait, so
in
what
the
is
same
it? What
way
is it?
that everyone's affected by sexism. A lot of people are affected by racism, or everyone's affected by racism. Everyone's affected by homophobia, and I think internalized homophobia is often used as a term for queer person, like, and their reflection of society back onto themselves. So in that sense, I think its official definition is not like if a straight man's experiencing something like this, it's just homophobia, unless they actually are like repressing a gay part of
Well, I
themselves.
don't know. I feel like internalized homophobia is it's a bad term.
Yes.
It should be like internalized feminine phobia, because that's when it relates to straight guys.
Yeah, one of the studies that I was going to bring up, like there's a lot of conversation around definitions.
Sorry, if you're internalized feminine phobia, if you're identifying as a man.
Say
Right?
that again.
Because like I'm like, can women have internalized, like, can women like hate their femininity?
Of course.
I just like went cross-eyed and passed out. I was like, okay,
is
they obviously
woman?
can, but now I'm like, damn, what's that called? And like, let's make an episode on
Internalized
that.
sexism.
Internalized.
So that's one of the terms
sexism.
that was used for this as an alternative, because first of all, even phobia is often considered a misnomer for homophobia. Like it's not a fear, it's actually a prejudice. And so one of the alternate terms for internalized homophobia has become internalized heterosexism, which is like sexism is obviously prejudice against women, and heterosexism is against gay people,
Queer people
who are not heterosexual.
But so much of this is about sexism. It's about hating the feminine aspects of yourself.
I think we can have a conversation around like that. Of course, is true.
Yeah.
But there's multiple elements, right? Like you can have internalized sexism as well as feel prejudice for being outside of the norm sexually, like
being
a
gay.
gay man who's interested in men.
Gay.
Some of that may not be because of sexism.
Wow.
Some of that self-hate can just because like you feel ostracized from society.
Yes.
So in terms of like definitions, a lot of it does come down to like self-afflicted homophobic, like society's homophobic views being self-reflected back onto you as a queer person. Most of the studies I found are like on lesbian, gay, and bi people. Like they often will say explicitly on LGBT.
Yeah.
community.
Wait, I found that too.
I think because
I think it's a transness is actually. Oh wow! In this, sorry, my study was about masculinity and how it relates to homo. What is this called? Internalized homophobia.
I know. I keep saying
like there's so many like homo words in my studies and like on my doc that I'm just like going cross-eyed and being like homo. But it was saying how like I'll get to the point of mine, which is essentially that gay men who act more masculine, according to the study, have more internalized homophobia. But they were like trans people who, like, say you are like born like being like with the sex of a woman, but you are trans, so you are like a trans man.
Yeah.
Their taking up of masculine ideals makes them feel happier inside.
Right.
Whereas taking up of masculine ideals when you're a gay man, according to the study, makes you feel more depressed. So that's why like they were taking the T out of the LGB in this study.
Yes,
they're, like,
it is a
trans,
different
it's
perspective.
Different. Yeah.
The only thing I'd want to sort of not correct, but have a like, obviously I don't know what your study is, but it's like, I think being masculine as a gay man can be toxic, but there are of course many gay men who would naturally maybe feel empowered by being masculine, and it's the question.
I can go into my study because it's interesting.
Okay,
but
sure.
it's just a study.
But you know what I mean.
400.
Of course, there are straight men who are masculine and some are feminine. There are gay men, some are naturally masculine and feminine.
Yeah, that's
it's
true.
understanding, and what this conversation about internalized homophobia is going to touch on is it's the people who have that who are projecting masculine ideals and norms that end up often having these problems. But I'm sure there are many gay men who naturally are like, oh, I just like feel empowered by being more masculine, and it's not because of self-hatred.
Yeah, this
I think
study
it's worth
was
leaving
more
room for that.
Yes, but this study was saying if internalized homophobia is a complicated thing that you don't just necessarily accept in yourself or are just like, I have it. Their point was if you are someone. Okay, I'll explain the studies. 489 Australian gay men. Red flag. Can't think of a more fucked up group. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm absolutely kidding. I need to go on an Australia like pilgrimage
tour. Yeah.
And just like be like, namaste, I love you all. I'm just gonna go to Australia, tan, get dreads, do yoga, come back, love them, and everyone's just gonna be like, yeah, but we hate you now. Okay. So 489 self-identified Australian gay men, 18 to 72 years old, online survey. And what they did would ask them questions like, does it bother you when you have to ask for help? And then on a scale of 1 to 5, you'd answer. The seeming sort of like takeaway from a question like that would be like, if you have an issue asking for help, you are quote unquote trying to be more masculine.
Okay.
So they're asking a bunch of questions that like, according to psychology, relate to how you feel about masculinity.
Okay.
And then they're using a bunch of other questions that are talking about internalized homophobia and the way you feel about it. And they found that people who are presenting as more masculine have higher rates of internalized homophobia. They have more feelings of hatred towards the fact that they are gay and towards other gay people. So their point was not saying that, of course, there are, as you said, masculine gay men who don't have internalized homophobia, but they're like, if we're trying to figure out who has it, who doesn't, because it's like not something that people necessarily like I would love if someone could just like read me to filth and be like, you have it at this measure so I can like work on it. They're like, if you are a masculine presenting gay man, you are more likely needing to check your
That's
internalized homophobia, which I think is really interesting because it's like, I think as gay people, because of all the things we're going to get into, masculinity is idealized, and maybe you look at masculine gay men like me last week just like ripping the shit out of a bunch of like topless roided up like lawyer bankers, gay banker, white bankers from Toronto.
Wait, what are you talking about?
I was making
what do you mean last week?
Last week I made a joke about how like when you go to like gay male parties, like some of them, you literally talk to them and I'm like, why are you a football player steroided gay man who is like a lawyer on Bay Street who's white, and like you are the most masculine archetype of high school, but you're gay? Like,
right.
I was kind of ripping on that, like those people, but it's like, actually there's another way to frame it, which is like they might be struggling the most.
Fair.
Which I think is interesting because I look at those people and I'm like, oh my God, they're so, I have like, oh my God, it's like, we're going to get into it. I'm like, is it internalized homophobia? Like it could be a version of it, but I have some sort of like animosity towards them. Whereas if like, according to the study, it's like, oh, they actually might be struggling the most with their homosexuality. It gives you a little bit more like
compassion.
Like when you look at the circuit case, it's like, aw, you know what I mean? Whereas usually when you look at like really masculine, white, strong men, it's easy to be like judging them.
Yeah.
That's all that this study made me be like, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
And it gives compassion.
It is worth thinking about. I think because we live like personally in a circle surrounded by like many gay men, we're in a bubble. And as a result, we kind of do forget that many people actually do experience homophobia explicitly, right? Like, of course we experience it implicitly in the world, but like in our day-to-day life, like I don't experience a lot of homophobia. I live in Toronto, a super progressive city. We go to gay bars. We're surrounded by queer people all the time. What I'm trying to say.
I remember that one time I was on the subway and that guy was like,
Are you fucking
why are you looking at me, faggot? And I was like, oh, and I like kind of laughed because he looked gay. Like, not to like judge him, but remember he had gorgeous like blue-dyed hair, and he looked, and it just came out of nowhere.
Yeah,
it was
that
wild.
spooky.
I always think about that. I'm like, so it can like
so think of
randomly
things like
happen.
that. I think it's a good reminder to think that some people's internalized homophobia and projection of toxic masculinity is obviously a defense mechanism to actually protect themselves. Even though that may not always be the case, it obviously bleeds into like being actually in the queer community or around gay people, and it's still there. And that's when you're like, you don't need to put this front up. But I think a lot of people outside of like Toronto in this world are actually oppressed, even as gay
and so
men,
they're acting more masculine to
as a
protect
protective
them.
tool, right? Like, so I think that's a worth thinking. Like, a lot of people live in fear, and I think that like there's an entire category of stress called minority stressor, which is related to internalized homophobia. That's like, if you're a minority in any way, you have like different kinds of stress. So it says like stress theory posits that stressors are any factors or conditions that lead to change and require adaptation by individuals. Minority stressors strain individuals who are in a disadvantaged social position because they require adaptation to an inhospitable social environment, such as LGBT persons' heterosexual social environment. So,
what? I went cross-eyed.
That's okay. Sorry, that was just a lot of random words. All to say that simply being a queer person
is bad.
Simply being a minority. So whether that's because you're in a space where you're like a gendered minority or you're a racial minority, you will experience literal stress because of that people who are in quote unquote the norm or the majority don't have. And these things are often like measurable in studies. Like, there are literal stressors that your body faces by being in an environment where you are a minority.
Okay, I see. So it's like, okay, so being gay is hard.
It is, but I think going back to my point, we live in a bubble where it's obviously inside of that bubble. It's very easy to just have fun and be like, you can be free, you can be yourself, you don't have to judge yourself.
We are in Toronto, so I think our bubble is that white gay men experience an extreme amount of privilege.
Totally.
I think that's like another aspect where it's like hard to talk about these studies and talk about the world because like in Toronto, for example, like we're such a like, there's so many new immigrants, there's so many other issues that I'm like, and there's obviously a lot of queer people who are like people of color who experience a lot of issues here, but like it's not like I'm thinking about white gay men's homophobia
and
when
like
I think
suffering.
of all the issues in Toronto that I'm like trying to figure out how to help.
Yes.
So it's like, I think, but then I'm like,
think that's
the
where you
worldwide,
project
it's like,
the judgment on that category.
Yeah.
And I'm just playing devil's advocate only to be like, of course, we should also have sympathy because that usually comes from somewhere. And I mean, even straight men have to face this pressure to
so
be
that's the
masculine.
thing. Like, I'm like, this study was so interesting because they're obviously like any science study, they like have to write all the information before they do the study. And it was like full of such cool links to other studies, but it's just like masculinity is so messed up. Like AOC is on this. Like she's so like, well, because like everyone's always like talking about how men are struggling, and AOC is like the person who I'm always like, she's tackling it from the way that like science and psychology is like, yeah, it's because of masculinity.
I actually haven't like, I feel like she's kind of been quiet lately, although I don't use Twitter anymore, and I'm just like, is that why I don't hear about her that much?
I hope to God she's not just on Twitter.
No, I know that's not true, but I feel like I used to maybe, you know, people come in waves in terms of like their
I hope
cultural...
she's just like ramping her ass up to be president, my friends.
Isn't there like an age minimum that she...
Well, I don't know, because right now it's like 90 plus and that's only allowed.
I think you have to be like 40 or something. I don't know, but so it's like hopefully she will...
In Chile, it was 35 because I remember their new president was like 37 and I love him. Okay, so like men, like in the Western heteronormative context, it's just so Western. It's like, God damn, British and your colonization. If only you realized how weak you are, didn't try and take over the world. Women are quote unquote expected to be passive, emotive, and sentimental, whilst men are supposed to be stoic, brave, and aggressive. That's the stereotype of like Western heteronormative context of like gender.
Okay. And
it's like even just those words, like it's like when we learn about mental health, it's like stoic, brave, and aggressive. It's like you're gonna struggle.
Yeah.
And so then it's like
it's like It's an act.
And it's also like, those are the bad ones. Like passive, emotive, and sentimental. Like those are the ones that like psychology is like, those aspects are like what make you feel less depressed. Anyways.
I think it's worth mentioning that things are not inherently good or bad. It's the inauthenticity of them, right? Like I think being brave, being masculine, being these terms, when they're fake is when it's toxic. But of course it's like, I think this is the harder conversation to have, because it's like, well, being masculine inherently isn't a bad trait. It's just that it gets like almost weaponized.
Well, okay, let me continue, because it's like the heteronormative Western context polarizes these ideas between masculinity and femininity. So no, it's like all those things mixed is good. You know what I mean? That's what, like, if you keep
when
going,
we can accept that like those traits are good in all different ways. Is that what you mean? But
no, I'm saying like, obviously women aren't just passive, emotive, and sentimental.
Right.
That's false. And men aren't just stoic, brave, and aggressive. Those are all, if you polarize those two,
yeah, when
they're
you
not
believe
good.
they must
Although
be
my
segmented.
personal opinion is like, I'd rather be the feminine one from a mental health perspective. Maybe I'm exaggerating, whatever. But it's like, the point is that that's not true. There's like, no, women are also stoic, brave, and aggressive.
Of course, yeah.
But the point is that society forces this polarization. And then what it does is it creates like maladaptive behaviors in men, straight men, and gay men to overcompensate. And they fear like the feelings of inferiority. And when essentially, if you fear femininity, what ends up happening is that they're like, the fear of femininity leads to increased competition, increased depression. And what I found so interesting is that they really focused on this. It creates a fear of taking risks in men. A fear of femininity creates a fear of taking risks in men because they're scared of their femininity showing.
I see.
And I was like, that is so interesting. I'm in an art class. I'm in a Spanish class, all full of women. And I'm like, I think men are scared to do things
that could be perceived as feminine.
And like, I'm not even saying taking a Spanish class is perceived as feminine, but there's a risk there. You have to go, you have to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Like, it's actually so interesting. There's like 3 men in my Spanish class, and it's like, I look at them and they get like called, they have to be subservient to the teacher. The teacher's like, how do you say that? And they kind of stumble and they get it wrong and they blush. And it's like, that they're reacting differently to the mistake than the women are. Like they're like, when I was reading this study, because it was right before class, I was like, that man is like blushing,
right? Because
he said like "como está" instead of
right,
"estás."
and he's probably been taught, not he, but just in general, men are you saying men are taught?
Well,
like,
it's a
making
mistake.
mistakes
It's
and
like
needing help,
yeah, and it's
those
like
kind of things
there's something
are feminine
sentimental
qualities
and emotive about like being like,
and
oh, I got
vulnerable.
it wrong, and vulnerable, and it's like a lot of issues with men that we have talked about a lot on this podcast, especially like men who retire. It's like they deteriorate because they're not like going out and like getting new hobbies, and like they're scared.
Yeah.
And it's like so interesting because it's like this study is saying it's like that fear is maybe of being perceived as feminine or weak. Like and I was like, that like resonates for me. Like there's something that I feel so happy that I get to be a gay man because I have accepted this feminine part of me that I like do all these crazy things. I take a bunch of risks because I'm like, when I show up, well, maybe they're like gay, and I'm like, yeah. Like there's something that like there's a power in that like
you can own.
I think men would be helpful for men to understand. Like getting in touch with their femininity actually will make them less fearful. And fear is like a weirdly like almost feminine trait. Like it's almost like paradoxical in some way.
I don't agree with that last part, that fear is a feminine trait.
Sorry, I'm saying I just feel like men don't want to be perceived as people who are fearful.
Yeah.
Sorry, these men who are masculine.
Sure.
I'm just like, it's interesting. It's like, no, your fear is your fear of femininity.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm just like, that's interesting to me.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like I'm saying,
think
like
that's interesting. I don't know why
like,
you lost me at the end, but
just being like I don't know why I'm harping on this, and maybe let's just move on. But it's like, oh, you're scared. Like being scared is probably something they're like, no, I'm not scared. I'm not scared. It's like, you are scared of being feminine. The word scared is in that statement. It's like, you know what I mean? There's a bravery, there's a masculinity, there's a stoicness in accepting your femininity, because it's like the ultimate conquer of fear.
I think, and this is going to be a generalization as well, but obviously certain domains of like intellectual pursuit are considered feminine. And I think in a way, you know, like many like men who go into academia, like, and not into like sport or like physical or aggressive spaces, are considered more feminine. But in my personal experience, this is not based on a study, this is anecdotal, like when I think of like my male professors in general, of course there's like toxically masculine ones, but I feel like academic men have come to terms and are maybe more comfortable and okay having feminine attributes. Same as gay men.
Now we can go back to the internalized homophobia, because the gay men thing is wild.
This reminds me a lot of like the in-group, out-group conversation we had the other week.
Yeah.
When we talked about even, what was our last episode on diverse neurodivergence, where it's like, okay, there's like a conversation that the whole world can have. And in that stance, I'm like, no, gay men are oppressed in this world. But then when we come into the inner conversation, I'm like, yeah, but gay men are so privileged. So let's like acknowledge that. And that's where our maybe sometimes judgment of internalized homophobia comes. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Like on the larger scale, I'm like, there are lots of issues. And now we're going to like, because you're like, yeah. And then I start talking about gay men and I'm like, oh,
okay, but then now I'm like, is that internalized homophobia? So, okay, do you think you have, like, how bad is our internalized homophobia?
Yeah, it's there for sure. Sometimes I wonder for myself if like, not that I am completely straight passing, but I grew up more straight passing than some like
than
this little homo over here.
Wow,
no.
And you're immediately canceled. Press that button. Press that button.
Which one is
canceled?
Sorry, I don't think I was straight passing because I was constantly called gay in high school. But like, I think
no, you're straight passing. But then you were like, no, what I'm gonna do? Make musical theater my my whole personality, and then it's sort of like, okay.
But I wonder if internalized homophobia, it's like chicken or egg. Is it harder to break free from that when you can mask yourself? No, like pun intended, like M-A-S-K or M-A-S-C.
Put that on a shirt and smoke
mask
it.
for mask. Versus if you are innately exuberant and feminine and outgoing as a man, you might just have to accept that, and you're like no longer trying to hide. I'm not sure. This is just
no. This is so
that
interesting.
Perhaps, like I know for sure I have internalized homophobia. I mean, I think
every
in the world
gay
do.
man does.
Yes,
I think every gay man has internalized homophobia, and every man has internalized heterosexism and fear of femininity. And I think that's just because, and what these studies are saying, again, if you're in a Western environment and a heteronormative context, which everyone in Canada, certainly Australia and America. Wow, if I'm meaner to Australia than America, it's like, you know, like, I'm so sorry. You make fun of the people who you can. You guys are fine. Have these issues, and I think that there's a scale of it, but I think one thing that is interesting, again, going back to the study, is that feminine acting gay men will receive, and it does say in the study, receive the most hate and the most, like what you were saying, like minority stress. And they are essentially having like harder lives in general, but they might not have as much internalized homophobia,
right,
which is what this study is talking about, which is the hatred of yourself and being gay, the hatred of the feminine aspects and the fear of the feminine aspects of yourself. It causes you to become quote unquote straight acting, become anti-effeminate. And that can be such a huge issue because it's like a little bit more hidden maybe than like the people who are experiencing like vitriolic these are acts that they're having to deal with. Whereas internalized homophobia, you might go your whole life without ever addressing it.
Totally. It's
you
less
don't have
explicit.
to. Yes.
It's difficult to know. I think even I think, like you said, every gay man has internalized homophobia, but of course there's scales. I have two things to say. One, I'm going to bring up my study, which has like three. It was really interesting. It looked at like what is internalized homophobia, because that's like a big conversation.
Yeah.
Like what is actually causing it, and then what does it do to a person who has it? But What was I going to say?
One thing, like my study used an example of was like, do you dislike Drag Race?
No.
Yeah, it was one of the questions.
Like,
and
are
I was
you a
like,
gay man who
I was like,
dislikes Drag Race?
I'm like becoming the gay guy that I'm like, I fucking hate Drag Race, but I swear it's because it's repetitive. Like I'm
Sure,
like,
Greg.
I know I was built, made
Sure.
me think. Like if I was on the study, I would have been like, I would have put a 3, but it's like, damn, I would have been like, yeah. I was like, I literally after was like, someone like asked me about Drag Race. I was like, love it, because I was like, I don't like. I'm like, I am sick of it, but I'm like, I don't want it. Like it was kind of like made me question like, why am I hating Drag Race? But anyways, it just makes you think like there are actually gay men who I think from day one have had a hard time with like a show that prides of femininity.
Yes.
And
that almost every cast member is an effeminate
It was just
man.
like, so I read the surveys and then when I saw that question, I was like, that's an amazing question. Like, do you like Drag Race? Like in a literal study.
Do you think one of us has more internalized homophobia, or it's just in different ways?
Okay, another thing this study. Wow, I really like this study. Okay, so I just want to say this: having internalized homophobia, they said, does lead to intense anxiety and body shaming and body dysmorphia.
Okay.
So the direct correlation to that is interesting because I think people go to the gym. Hello, gay men. It's like. We're
Definitely,
sick.
yeah.
Like the going to the gym part is about building your body. And I sometimes think about like how interesting it is that all sort of like the jocks in my high school are like truly just like living the quintessential like drink beer every night, like have their like dad,
they're
their
not
dad
thinking
gave
about
them
that
a
anymore.
job and they look, and all the people who ended up gay are absolutely jacked now. Like it's just like, it's like I just imagine all those like jocks going through their phone being like, holy shit, like every
that
like
little like gay
sort of like
nerd is
twink
like
guy I made fun of could like kick the shit out of me now. So there's like something like really interesting there I was like, whoa, it's like it's gay men trying to deal with their internalized homophobia through making their bodies seem masculine. But I think that they were like, it is an ebb and flow. Like you can have internalized homophobia that pulsates, goes away, pulsates, goes away. They said with age, it usually gets better. Hashtag it gets better. Like you decrease your internalized homophobia as a gay man, usually if you come out with age. And their main way they say to combat it is exposure to, literally it said, effeminate people. So whether that's hanging out with more women or hanging out with more effeminate gay men, that's where my judgment of some masculine gay men comes from. When you look at them and you're like, you're all hanging out with each other. There's no women even in the mix here. Yeah. Like there's an obsession with masculinity that I think is like, they're like, the antidote to internalized homophobia is truly hanging out with women and gay men who are effeminate and can accept themselves. Yeah. That's what their discussion answer was.
Well, I think that's also why just like even being around people who are like non-binary or trans, like challenging these ideas of what does it even mean to be a specific gender is interesting. It opens your eyes to being like, okay, like we can deconstruct gender, and then that makes it easier, I think, to deconstruct masculinity. But it's difficult at the same time because these subgroups, like the queer community in general, has so many subgroups and that's amazing in a lot of ways. Like it's really cool that we can celebrate. We have like bears and twinks and all these different things, and like that's nice to be like there's like everyone's sexually interested in a certain type of person.
This study also went in a bit on the
You're
bear.
obsessed.
I'm
with
obsessed.
the study.
Well, because it was so specific.
No,
it was obviously done by like gay men. It was like so they went in a bit on the bear community. They
because
think
it's
that the bear
hyper-masculine?
community, the way it presents itself, could be a problematic aspect of internalized homophobia, which I was just like, that's a really intense thing to say. But
I think it's important to always say can be, right?
Yes,
like, because for example, like there are just people who are naturally, whether it's their lifestyle or their genetics or whatever, are just like naturally going to be a bear. Because like even when you like have chest hair, like if you're like if you have no chest hair, you're like not really called a bear. Do you know what I mean? Like a bear is like a hairy big man or whatever. So like some of this is just like naturally what you are, and it's trying to like decipher. I think this is why these kinds of studies are interesting, but also it's such a challenge because how do you parse apart? Were you quote unquote naturally born this way, or are you projecting?
Now beautiful in my way, because God makes no mistakes. I'm on the right track. Okay.
Wow, Gaga solved internalized homophobia.
She really didn't. Okay, but my answer to your question about let's talk about who has more internalized homophobia is that it goes in and out, and that, like, for example, you could have a time in your life where you're spending more time with gay men only who are masculine, and then you're gonna have more internalized homophobia.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden you get a job and you're hanging out with women and you're hanging out with more effeminate gay men, and your personality changes and you have less internal. They were like,
Sure.
it will change.
Yeah.
There's the macro, the exo, which is society, the meso, which is your greater community, the micro, which is your close relationships, and the self. So I don't think it's finite.
Yeah, and I'm sure it manifests different for everyone. So
Yeah.
that for some people it might manifest in sculpting their body to look hyper masculine. In some people it might express in the way they actually treat people or act to people. Like, we may have totally different versions of internalized homophobia.
Okay, so in this moment, as in like this week or this, who do you think has more internalized homophobia? That's what I mean. I would say, like, in the past, for sure, you had more.
Yeah,
Like
I grew up in a religious household. I think that also plays a role.
What?
A religious household, because you're like reminded that to be gay is also a literal sin.
And you have like a masculine dad and like a feminine mom.
Sure,
and it's
yeah,
very,
like in prototypical roles.
like
It's a very
binary
heteronormative family.
yeah.
And I grew up in a smaller place, like a small town. Literally.
Yeah, I have like
And I went to
intellectual
Catholic
Toronto
school.
CBC parents. Like, I
And
just
like-
think innately the answer would be obvious, but I think now
It's you.
yeah. Well, I don't hang out with enough people, period.
Yeah,
Like,
true.
I just feel like there was a time in my life where I was so much more surrounded by women and like effeminate gay men. Whereas now I'm like alone. And I just go to the gym a lot, and everyone at the gym, I'm like, well, that's not like the people like
Right,
who are the
you're
right
wanting
influence
to hang out with,
So then
yeah.
I was kind of like, but I'm like, you also go to the gym. I don't know if it's
the
obviously
gym-
is me now, but I'm certainly like, this study made me be like, Greg, go hang out with your girlies, get off the couch, and put on your nail polish.
I think the gym is a shield that people use because it's a way to appear more masculine, but say it's for health. And of course, that's why it's difficult, because it's
Ooh,
like
wait, say that
health
again.
is important. Like, going to the gym is a good thing in general. Like, I'm not
Yeah.
saying everyone has to do it, but it's like on the surface, it's like I'm doing something not because I want to be straight. It's because I want to be healthy.
so healthy. Yeah,
It's good for
as
my
you
body.
inject
and
yourself
mental
with
health.
steroids, eat so much
Well,
protein
not
that kills
everyone's
you
doing
and look
that.
like a
Well-
gorilla. Okay, sorry.
There's lots of people outside of that category who are trying to go to the gym. And so I think that's like one of those difficult things to parse out. It's like, it is good for you. Like, lots of
Yeah.
people use the gym for their mental health. Lots of
Yeah.
people use the gym to feel good, to have energy, all these things. But I think it also allows gay men in particular, because we see this like body issue where it's like, no femmes, no fats, no whatever is like the phrase that gets used on like Grindr and stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's like protective, because you get to be like, I'm doing it for me, but it can
Yeah.
also be behind your mind that you're ignoring that it's for something else.
One thing that I do, if anyone's ever like, are you masked? I'm like, that is the most fucked up question, and I block them.
Oh yeah, no, that's
So I
fine.
always feel good doing that. I'm like, well, now I feel bad because they actually just have
No,
internalized
but that I
homophobia.
think it's worth, like, it is a problem. Lots of people don't do this, but it is a problem in the gay world where, like, if you don't look jacked, if you don't act hyper masculine, you're not attractive to a certain group of people.
Yeah.
And I do think that's really toxic
Yeah.
for everyone involved, especially
Yeah.
the person
that
who's
is
doing it.
internalized homophobia too.
And then yeah, exactly.
But that's a really powerful way to look at it, because it's like, then you can be less.
It's sad for the person.
Yeah,
for
it's
sure.
sad for the person. It still doesn't mean that question is appropriate, and I still think it's okay for me to say that's a fucked up question and block them.
Yeah,
But
I think so
do
too.
think
But
that
then you
there's a
can
part of
also
me
pause.
that's like, oh, is there another way that's like, oh, I'm so sorry you asked that question.
Yeah.
But that's also so condescending.
I think you don't have to take responsibility for it.
no, I
You
don't.
can just be internally like,
But
well, that's
Do you
actually
think
sad.
it's like I have more internalized homophobia now, literally, because I have an Equinox membership.
Yes.
But it's like, you go to a trainer,
Yeah.
but that's less. Like, I'm like,
No,
I'm
you're
like,
right.
Do you
I-
actually think it's me? Like, a part of me wanted to like say, yeah, it is me, because it's like funny, and it's like there's a change. But I'm actually like, I don't actually know.
Life's too complicated for me to understand. Like,
Yeah.
the reasons we do things can be so hidden to us. Like, there's so many more layers, right? Like, of course, toxic masculinity and internalized homophobia affects us, but so does like the need and desire to feel loved and accepted and
Yeah.
good at things. And and successful. Like there's so many layers that you're like, which one is it? Which fucked up desire is it that's driving me to do the things that I'm doing?
Yeah, but I know that I definitely have internalized homophobia.
course.
And I do feel like there was a time in the past where I like honestly like didn't.
I think my study that I'm going to bring up right now is going to help us elicit a specific idea about ourselves.
Okay.
Because this was
They're
like
and it is that you're gay.
you hate Drag Race, you go to the gym, you
No, you go to Equinox. I hate Drag Race and I go to Equinox. It's like, yeah, you're fucked. You have internalized homophobia.
Okay.
I don't hate Drag Race. I'm just like, come on. Let's just like maybe make less of them. Okay.
or
continue.
like give us a shake it up somehow.
Yeah.
Or I actually don't know. You're right. This has been on for a long time.
Yeah.
But like if a straight man's like, oh, that's, I'd be like, it's a great show.
Actually, to be honest, the only people I know who are obsessed with it, like in a really intense way, are like straight people now because it's like they're experiencing it new
For the first
Whereas
time.
I'm like, oh, I've seen 48,000 episodes. I like look at them and my eyes go blurry, and I'm like, what year are we in? Like I've seen this before.
Okay. So when defining internalized homophobia, this study came out in 2018. There were 3 correlations. They call it 3 subscales that were the strongest.
Okay.
So subscale number 1 was the desire to be heterosexual.
Never in a million years would I want that.
Exactly. Well, maybe when you were younger.
But the weird thing
You know
is
what I
that
mean?
now
Like-
I'm like getting attracted to women. Okay. So
Okay. We'll get there when we get there.
what's that called when you hate me because
Well-
I might like women, some women?
I did not ever say that.
You always judge me. Okay, but now I'm like, but I am questioning.
Okay, you
I'm
want
like,
to know
is
the
that me
truth?
wanting to be
No,
homo-
this is the same projection. It's me when you look at gay men being internalized homophobia. It's me going like, are you trying to be so progressive that you are making
Are you
yourself less gay?
serious? That's so rude.
This is the joke. Did you ever watch Broad City? You know when she's like, Alana, you're so progressive that you're a racist. Like it's kind of like that sometimes.
No,
I know
no,
it's genuine.
I think that it's like people are forced into binaries, and I was forced into the binary of being gay, and then sometimes I
think it's
meet
good.
women.
It's a good thing. You're right. It is my internalized issue with it, probably that projects my feeling to you. But sometimes it's like you're being so progressive.
And have you ever gone to lesbian parties? It's like a lot of those girls are so hot.
Fair.
In
And
a
that's
masculine,
something that this
interesting
conversation
way.
has lacked, obviously, because we're 2 gay men. I'd be interested to hear a lesbian's take on like lesbian masculinity and if that's internalized homophobia or not.
Oh, I need to hang out with more
you know what I mean?
lesbians.
I'm curious about the conversation in there. Okay.
Okay, so do you desire to be heterosexual?
That's like the first one. So that's negative feelings and homophobic attitudes towards oneself as a product of social bias against sexual minorities. And the quote they use is, I feel that being gay is a shortcoming for me.
Okay. No, I absolutely think it is a 1,000% a superpower. And
But you know what I mean? When you were young, like we all had to face that feeling. Like when I was younger, I was like, I wish I was straight.
I definitely was in grade 7 and 8 when everyone was like, faggot. I was like, well, that sucks. And definitely when I started like masturbating to gay porn, I was like, well, that's wrong. But then like throughout high school, actually, this is interesting. And as soon as I came out in grade 11, I was like, it's my superpower. And I really loved it. But I do think there's something there too, which was that like, I almost loved it too much. Like it was sort of like it didn't allow me to fully address.
Fair. You tried to use it as a weapon to protect yourself.
To protect myself against homophobia. Which is a useful
actually
skill, but making me like so confused.
That's that same thing when therapists are like, it was a useful tool.
Yeah, it was a useful tool. And now it's like,
now
it's like, no, Greg, you're actually straight. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Okay. Subscale 2 reflects.
Wait, sorry, answer that. Do you deep down wish you were straight?
No, not anymore.
Okay.
No, yeah.
But was there a time?
For sure, yeah.
Like
when I
when?
was like dealing with, am I gay? It was.
But when you came out, like,
I think once I came out was my accepting and being like, I would rather, like maybe the first year was still that like being uncertain, but I was kind of, like we were dating before I even came out.
Did you start by saying I'm bi?
I think probably. Yeah.
Because that's probably like a bit of the like.
I didn't
part
ever
of it.
come out as bi. I came out as gay. But I think in my mind before I came out as gay, I was like, I like both guys and girls.
Yeah,
I just never want to touch a girl sexually.
Yeah.
Okay. So no, I don't feel that way now at all. Like if I had a magic wish granted, I would never wish to be straight.
And again, we are, to our straight listeners, we're so sorry.
Oh yeah, no, it's not because I think being straight's bad.
Never wish to be Australian. I'm kidding.
Okay. Subscale 2 reflects fears of coming out. Quote, if I if my straight friends knew about my sexual orientation, I would feel uncomfortable.
What? Isn't that kind of the same as the first one?
No, the first one is like, I don't want to be gay.
And the second one is I'm gay, but I don't.
Afraid of what being gay does to me in this world.
Whoa.
Like I
Again,
have fear.
No. I walk into a room. I'm like, by the way, I'm gay, so bow down. Like I do find I'm like, I want everyone here to know I'm gay.
Yeah.
Like
And-
when I'm like,
But I would say as somebody. Well,
I act extra gay in new situations.
Yeah, I do too, because I'd rather not have to like explain it. But there's still, obviously, as a queer person, you have to be in, if you're in a room with new people, you're like, there's a moment where people have to find out. I remember when I went on Big Brother being like, you have to like share beds with someone. And I was just like, I don't want to be beside a straight man before they know I'm gay, unless they're explicitly like, I'm okay with
you're
that.
so insane. Like I love how you actually get to have an anecdote from like the most fucked up experiment.
But because the first 24 hours,
no, that's like so
you're in a
interesting.
room with 16 new people.
Oh my God, if I went on Big Brother, I would definitely open the door and like, isn't there like a meme of a girl like coming out of the door? I would be like, hello. Like,
because we're different in that way. And
Yeah.
there was another guy on my season who was more flamboyant than me, and it was like everyone was up. He was like wearing a dress on the first episode.
So you were just like mumbling like, I'm gay too.
well, I would be like trying to like let my gayness out, but you're also meeting people for the first time. So you're just
Yeah.
trying to like, I wanted to make sure I was like sleeping beside a girl and then being like, nah, I'm gay. But in the first 24 hours, people were like, we didn't know if you were gay, Mitch.
Wait,
But
you have to sleep beside people? That's weird.
there's only enough, like you share like a double bed with a
That's like
stranger.
that show's so fucked
Okay,
up.
anyway.
You're so fucked up.
We've
Like
been-
that's
we
crazy.
gotta
No,
wrap.
they're allowed to make more beds. You
Oh,
know what I
yeah.
mean? Like Big Brother, like good lord, like I didn't even think about that. You STI ass show. Continue.
STI.
I don't know. They want you to
Okay,
bang.
subscale 3 measured worries about stereotypes based on sexual orientation. So, quote, when I think about coming out to a straight friend, I worry that he or she might watch me to see if I do things that are stereotypically homosexual. So it's not about the fear of them
Yeah.
disliking you for being gay, but it's the fear of being like boxed in by people seeing you as gay.
Okay.
So basically
These are
what this
odd
study
to me.
yeah, so those were forms of internalized homophobia they were evaluating,
Mm-hmm.
but what they realized is only the first one, the desire to be straight or not be gay, was associated with mental health issues. The other ones are kind of like minority stressors. They're inevitable, right? Like as a gay person or a queer person, you have to come out to people and have fear
Yeah.
around, will they treat me differently? Should I be scared? Will I have less opportunities? But by the people who had the idea, like, I wish I was straight, basically, both at baseline and in longitudinal studies, that was like linked to mental health outcomes where the other ones weren't, which I thought was interesting. So for this study, they recommend that the desire to be heterosexual should be what internalized homophobia is classified as.
Okay.
Is what they were basically studying.
Well, and like mine is saying, it's like this study argues that gay men who are overly concerned with masculine norms utilize hypermasculinity as a compensatory strategy for their perceived sense of inferiority. So obviously, like you're saying, you would have to answer yes to one of those three questions to have a perceived sense of inferiority around being perceived as gay. And this study is just saying that that actually causes gay men to present in hypermasculine ways. And it's like, I can now get that. You're presenting in a hypermasculine way, in theory, to fear,
Like to protect yourself from these fears.
But then I think that what I think this is not addressing is that there is something else in the gay community, which is that people are acting hypermasculine in order to like
attract each other.
Yes, in order to like, it's actually not about straight people. It's like gay men have become so fucked up that they've now created that fear around each other, perceiving each other as feminine, which is like really actually very sad.
That's
because
the darkest part.
That's the darkest
part. It's like this
part.
is where you should be safest, and you still feel unsafe. And actually, as a result, you're contributing to an environment that is unsafe for queer people.
Yes, exactly. And it's like, and you're maybe so shrouded in this like internalized homophobia, so unaware of it that you're like hurting yourself and others without an awareness, which is like, to me, the scarier part, the sadder part.
Yeah.
Because it's like, it's not actually, I think, these people's fault, because they're not really like necessarily looking at it that deeply. There's just like the feelings they have. And the feelings they have are actually so sad, because it's like they're from the hatred that you felt for being gay, that you maybe still feel, and like that probably dealt with you growing up. One
thing I would say, this is anecdotal in my own thoughts, about like that group of people who are hypermasculine and looking for hypermasculinity. I think part of it is a sexual fetishization of the idea of being masculine. So it's not always about who and what you are in your life. It's like, I want to hook up with someone who feels straight. Obviously there is like, for many gay people and even feminine gay people, like joke sometimes about like, it's a toxic thing about being like, oh, I want to hook up with a straight guy, because there's something like hot about that. And so I think, because the irony to me, and I don't mean this to be like overly judgmental, but a lot of times you go to those, like, if you're in an event where you're with like a lot of jacked bros who are like sexy and trying to act mask, you like talk to them and you're like, oh, you're still so gay. You know what I mean? You're still very feminine.
My God, I was like,
but so in many ways, it's a projection of what they want to be and what they're looking for sexually.
Like this study that I'm gonna marry is like maybe being like, it is those men who are acting so gay, who are presenting the most hypermasculine, because that is what it's saying. It's saying, you might have more internalized homophobia. You might have experienced more homophobia, which has caused you to go down this route of hypermasculinity, because growing up, you maybe were like actually made fun of so deeply that you course correct it.
Totally.
So it's like, maybe even all those masked guys that you eventually talk to are going to sound gayer than maybe the guy next who's like not presenting his mask, because he's probably like, well, I didn't have to like overcompensate as much. Yeah.
So
and even,
I
like,
think
bottoming,
it's
we haven't got to like topping and bottoming, but that's another interesting part too. They were in this study that I love, because they would talk about these things where like a part of internalized homophobia is like maybe not allowing yourself to like be a bottom, which is like interesting. Obviously there's so much more to that. There's pain, there's a lot of other things. But another thing they said to look at is, if you're someone who's not willing to be a bottom, like, why is that? Is it actually out of pleasure, or is it out of the fact that you are now submissing? You're
see
submissive.
it as like a what's the opposite of dominant?
Passive,
Thank
which is literally what the
the term in Spanish is pasivo.
Yeah, and women, like in the Western heteronormative context, women are expected to be passive. So there's something there. Again, it's not saying that it means you are struggling from it if you have it, but they were like, if you are obsessed with masculinity, surrounding yourself by only masculine men or just men, not willing to be a bottom, like these things,
they may be signs.
It's like maybe you need to then go to your therapist and just be like, can we talk about something? Because I'm not sure if this is the thing that affects me.
I just want to end on a specific note. I had a bunch of other studies. I'm not going to go through them, but all to say, these other studies looked at internalized homophobia and found the mental health outcomes are bad. So I think if you find yourself in this position, and we all are on the scale of it, I think, like even the most queer, effeminate presenting person who is a gay man, like has to be faced with this in society. But it's worth knowing, if you're listening to this and you're like, this kind of feels like me, that the mental health outcomes are not good. Of course, there are stressors just from being gay, but they're able to parse these apart and say people who are actually, we can say, have internalized homophobia, it's linked with like depression and anxiety and a lot of other issues.
And body dysmorphia. And severe depression, like bad, like it's bad. So it means like it's like therapy vibes. It's like, it means addressing it.
And I will say, I know you said as people age, it gets better, but it's worse for older generations. So at least it's becoming less so, I think, because younger and younger people can come out, and there's more acceptance around being effeminate. There's more conversations around this. And so I think generationally, hopefully that is like a positive trend towards people like actually getting to be what they want. If you actually are internally hyper masculine, then you get to be yourself. And if you actually are internally hyper feminine, you get to be yourself and have less of that fear around being judged for it, knowing that you can just like be accepted by the greater society and also by the queer community to like find people who love you for who you are.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay. That was a big one, but I think it's super interesting.
Yeah.
And like obviously, as to gay men, it's like a lot to talk about. I am so curious about like a lesbian's perspective, or even just like a queer or non-binary trans person's perspective on this conversation, both about gay men and then about their respective communities, and like how. I guess ultimately it's like toxic masculinity. How does that like weave itself into those? Or for lesbians, is there like toxic femininity? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'd be just interested to like
so
maybe bring
cool.
someone on one day and talk about that. Okay. We will take a little break, and then
We're about to go away for a weekend with only gay men. And it's like, you know what? Cancelled.
okay.
They better be acting feminine. I'm going to waltz in and be like, we're doing our nails.
You're like, we're dressing up as drag race.
Yeah, like, we're definitely watching Drag Race tonight. And if any of them says anything masculine, I'm going to be like, get out.
Okay. We'll be back.